Welcome to the deep dive. You've given us a really fascinating set of ideas to explore today. These thoughts and frameworks from the Great Mental Models, Volume 2, Physics, Chemistry, and Biology.
Yeah, the idea is to get a grip on some, really fundamental principles, stuff that pops up everywhere.
Right, without having to read super dense textbooks. So our mission is basically to pull out the most insightful, the most useful bits for everyone listening.
Exactly. We want to give you this mental toolkit, help you see the world a bit differently, maybe have those aha moments where things just click because you get the underlying mechanics.
Okay, let's jump right in then. First up, relativity. And we're not just talking Einstein here, are we? It's more about how our viewpoint shapes, well, everything.
Totally. It's about perspective. Think about Galileo's ship experiment, that classic thought experiment.
Ah, yeah, the scientist below deck.
Right, he's on a smooth sailing ship, no windows. He drops a ball. To him, it just falls straight down right.
Uh-huh. He doesn't feel the ship moving.
Exactly. But someone watching from the shore, they see the ship moving forward and the ball falling. So they see the ball follow, like a curved path.
Same ball, same drop, completely different observations, just based on where you are or how you're moving.
It's all about the frame of reference.
Yeah.
Makes you think, doesn't it? We're all hurtling through space on Earth at, 67,000 miles an hour?
Wow, yeah. We never really think about that movement affecting how we see things day to day.
And it's not just theoretical. You mentioned the Chris Kinnison case study.
Oh, right. The eyewitness accounts. That was wild.
Totally contradictory stuff, wasn't it? People describing things that were physically impossible from where they were actually standing. Stress, position, bias.
Mm-hmm.
It all messes with perception.
It really drives home how subjective observation can be. Your own personal ship, your location, your feelings, what you already believe, it colors everything.
Uh-huh. And then there's Al-Tatawi in Paris.
Right, the Egyptian scholar. He went there and really compared French culture to his own.
And that contrast, that multiplied perspective, gave him such a richer understanding of both cultures. It wasn't just academic either. He brought back ideas that made a real difference in Egypt.
So it's about deliberately looking from different angles, seeing your own stuff through someone else's eyes.
Precisely, like getting feedback from different people on an idea.
Yeah.
You catch things you'd miss otherwise.
So the big takeaway here is always consider the frame. When you hear something, read something, whatever, think. Who's saying this? What's their viewpoint? What biases might they have?
Understanding their ship helps you get their perspective. Yeah.
But, and this is important, the book stresses relativity isn't relativism. Meaning just because perspectives differ, it doesn't mean all views are equally valid or true. We still got to use evidence, logic.
Right. But knowing about relative perspectives helps us check our own assumptions. Maybe seek out different views before deciding.
Exactly. It leads to a more complete picture.
Okay, moving on. Let's talk reciprocity. That basic give and take. It's everywhere, isn't it? From physics to, people. Yeah, Newton's third law is the classic physics example. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Like when you jump.
Uh-huh. You push down on the Earth, and when you land, the Earth pushes back up on you with the same force. It's happening constantly. Gravity pulls you down, you pull the Earth up. Tiny bit, but it's there.
A constant exchange. So how does that translate outside physics? The book uses Norman Bethune, the surgeon.
Yeah, Bethune's story is intense. He gave up so much: relationships, acceptance, ultimately his life helping people in war zones. We usually focus on the sacrifice, right?
Uh-huh, what he lost.
But the book links it to reciprocity and brings up studies on volunteering. People who help others often report better mental and physical health, more life satisfaction.
So it's like even in immense sacrifice, there's a kind of return. Maybe not tangible, but a deep sense of purpose or well-being.
Could be. It aligns with deeply held values, contributing to something bigger. That's a form of reciprocal benefit, maybe.
Interesting. Then there's tit for tat from game theory.
Right, simple strategy for situations with limited trust. You just mirror the other person. Cooperate if they cooperate, defect if they defect.
Keeps things fair, encourages cooperation over time.
Yeah, it sets clear expectations.
Yeah.
And the book distinguishes direct reciprocity. I help you, you help me, from indirect.
Like pay it forward. Or building a good reputation so others help you later.
Exactly. Both are vital for society. Direct for close ties, indirect for broader community trust and norms.
The Egyptian-Hittite alliance is mentioned too, based on mutual self-interest, right? Military backup.
Yeah, a deterrent. Shows reciprocity doesn't have to be purely altruistic. Strategic advantage can drive it too, benefiting everyone involved in a way.
Okay, but then there's the flip side. Schadenfreude. Taking pleasure in someone else's misfortune. How does that fit reciprocity?
It's like a warped version. The book suggests it can be tied to feelings about outgroups, feeling superior, or even a weird sense of justice, like the universe balancing the scales when someone gets what they deserve.
Satisfying that innate expectation of reciprocity, but in a negative way.
Yeah, kind of disturbing, but it fits the model. So reciprocity is fundamental. Shapes everything from simple kindness to global trade.
It helps explain cooperation, competition, even those weird feelings sometimes, that deep sense of fairness and exchange.
Exactly.
All right, next up. Thermodynamics. Energy, heat, order. This sounds a bit technical.
It can be, but the book finds great metaphors. There are the 4 laws, energy conservation, entropy.
Entropy, that's the tendency towards disorder, right? Things falling apart unless you put energy in.
Precisely. Your desk gets messy on its own. Takes effort to tidy it. Same applies to societies, organizations, even your own focus. Needs constant energy input to maintain order.
And it relates to the people around us, like reaching the same temperature.
Yeah, thermal equilibrium. Systems in contact tend to equalize temperature. We're kind of like that with people. We absorb the attitudes, the values of those we spend time with. Choose your influences wisely.
The book talks about walls too, like insulators.
Right. Walls, physical or metaphorical, try to slow down that equalization. Keep different temperature systems, maybe societies with different values, separate.
But they're never perfect, are they? Like Hadrian's Wall or the Great Wall of China, costly, need maintenance, and people still mingle, ideas still spread.
Exactly. Heat transfers through conduction, convection, radiation. Ideas spread through contact, movement, media. Walls try to block that, but like insulation, they're imperfect.
The Berlin Wall is a powerful example, trying to keep an ideology in, but it just highlighted the appeal of what was out.
Absolutely. It backfired, showed the cost and ultimately the futility of trying to completely block the exchange of ideas. Perfect isolation, social or thermal, is basically impossible.
The book even mentions fairy tales as a way to fight entropy.
Yeah, it's an interesting take. Stories provide structure, explanations for the confusing bits of life. They impose a kind of order on randomness, make us feel less overwhelmed by chaos.
So thermodynamics gives us this lens for energy, disorder, and the constant effort needed to maintain structure, whether it's physical or social.
Yeah, order requires energy. Isolation is tough. And even stories help us push back against the chaos.
Okay, shifting gears from energy to motion. Inertia, the resistance to change.
Newton's first law, yeah. Objects at rest stay at rest. Objects in motion stay in motion, unless a force acts on them. It applies way beyond physics.
Like habits. Starting is the hardest part.
Totally. Once you're moving, it takes less effort to keep going. It's also why multitasking doesn't really work. Switching focus constantly takes more energy than just sticking with one thing.
And it affects our thinking too, right? We build momentum in our beliefs or routines. It takes a real push to change course.
Definitely. The book uses lead versus absinthe as examples.
Oh yeah, lead was known to be poisonous for ages, but kept being used.
Millennia. While absinthe got banned super quickly based on suspicion, even though the fears were later mostly debunked.
Shows how strongly inertia holds onto old beliefs, while new ideas, even harmless ones, face huge resistance. The mass of the old belief matter.
And then there's escape velocity, like breaking free from gravity.
So the big initial effort needed to break out of an old habit or belief, like activation energy, which we'll get to.
Similar idea, yeah. Emphasizes that first big hurdle. Think of Lars Meitner in physics.
Facing all that gender bias.
Huge inertia against her. But her own belief in her work was this powerful, sustained force that let her break through.
And for us, personally, the book says start small, right? 1 push-up, floss 1, 2.
Exactly. Reduce the initial force needed, make the change tiny, gain momentum. Overcoming inertia often starts with just getting the wheels turning, even slowly.
So inertia explains resistance in motion, habits, beliefs. Overcoming it needs sustained force in the new direction.
It's a reminder that change isn't easy, but understanding inertia helps us strategize.
Okay, let's talk friction and viscosity. More forces resisting movement.
Right. Friction between surfaces, viscosity is like internal friction in fluids. Think how thick syrup flows compared to water.
And they're double-edged, the book says.
Yeah. Friction slows things down, causes wear, but we need it for traction. Can't walk or drive without it. Viscosity slows flow, but it's essential for lubrication, like oil in an engine.
Metaphorically, friction in relationships could be conflict, tension.
But also the grip needed for connection, maybe. And viscosity can slow down information flow. Chernobyl is the grim example here.
Oh, right. The Soviets suppressing info about accidents.
Created this incredibly high viscosity for accurate information. People didn't know the real danger, delaying responses, huge consequences. When you block truth, it often backfires.
But sometimes adding friction helps, like Toyota's Andencord.
Exactly. Any worker can stop the whole assembly line. That's adding friction, a small, immediate disruption. But it lets them fix problems right away, preventing bigger issues later. Less friction overall in the long run.
Counterintuitive, but smart. Reduces defects, improves efficiency.
Totally. It's strategic friction.
This also leads to velocity versus speed, right? Speed is just how fast. Velocity includes direction.
Crucial distinction. Progress isn't just speed, it's movement towards a goal. You can run fast in circles and get nowhere. Velocity is speed with purpose.
Napoleon's campaigns are mentioned, fast, but sometimes missing the bigger picture.
Yeah, his focus on speed sometimes overshadowed strategy, like in Russia. Velocity needs clear direction, clear communication, everyone pulling the same way.
So friction and viscosity are resistance. Understanding them helps navigate challenges, optimize systems, and focus on velocity progress with direction.
Yeah, sometimes you fight resistance, sometimes you use it strategically, but always keep your destination in mind.
Next principle, leverage. Amplifying effort for better results. And the book says it's influence, not manipulation.
Good distinction. Leverage is a force multiplier. Small input, big output, finding the key points where effort has the biggest impact.
Eleanor of Aquitaine is the example, using her territory.
Exactly. The Duchy of Aquitaine was her lever. Huge strategic value. She used it skillfully through marriages, alliances, to influence kings in France and England. Way more power than just force alone.
But there's a dark side, isn't there? Like the West Virginia coal towns.
Oh, definitely. When leverage is maxed out systematically, it becomes oppressive. Company towns, company script only usable at the company store. They controlled everything. Wages, prices, politics.
Chilling. Total control. But counter leverage is possible. Strikes, unions.
Yes, collective action. Individuals pool their small power to create a bigger force, balancing things out. Leverage isn't static. It can be challenged.
So leverage is powerful, amplifies effort, but needs wisdom. Gotta think about the ripple effects, the second and third order consequences.
Crucial. It's a tool. Use it thoughtfully. Understand the system you're trying to influence.
Okay, now for how change starts. Activation energy, the initial kick needed.
In chemistry, yeah, it's the minimum energy for a reaction. Got to break old bonds to form new ones. Like striking a match needs that initial friction, that heat to ignite.
And socially, Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso.
Great example. He knew overthrowing the government wasn't enough. Real change literacy. Healthcare needed sustained effort. A big initial push to get things moving and become self-sustaining. Building momentum.
Like overcoming inertia, but focused on that starting energy.
Exactly. The book also compares agricultural reforms. East Asia, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan versus others like the Philippines or Indonesia.
What was the difference?
The successful ones built a strong agricultural base first. They invested heavily there. Land reform, infrastructure. That created the foundation, the activation energy, for later industrial growth.
Whereas the others maybe skipped that foundational step, focused on quicker wins that didn't build the same base.
Seems like it. Didn't generate enough energy for that transformative shift. Shows the importance of sequence, building a solid starting point.
So activation energy is that upfront cost, energy, effort, resources to get change going. Chemical reaction, personal habit, societal shift. Once you're over the hump, momentum helps.
Yeah. Starting is often the hardest part, demands the biggest investment, but it paves the way.
Following activation energy, we have catalysts. Things that speed up change without being used up.
Right. Chemically, they lower the activation energy, offer an easier pathway for the reaction. Like catalytic converters in cars turn harmful fumes into less harmful ones, over and over.
They're efficient because they aren't consumed. The printing press is the big historical example.
Absolutely transformative. Made copying books faster, cheaper, dramatically lowered the activation energy for learning, spreading knowledge like wildfire, changed everything.
The Black Death, strangely, is also called a catalyst, despite being horrific.
Yeah, a devastating one. But it accelerated massive changes, weakened the church, shifted labor dynamics, spurred medical questioning. It didn't cause those trends, but it massively sped them up by disrupting the old order.
A stark reminder that even terrible events can catalyze change, though at immense cost.
For sure. On a lighter note, the book mentions Louis the Chieftain in Comfort.
His preference for privacy and comfortable living spaces.
Yeah. As a king, his choices were influential. He didn't invent comfort, but his embrace of it helped catalyze its spread through French society and architecture. An influential figure adopting something can speed up its acceptance.
So catalysts accelerate change, lower the barrier, or open new routes. But you need the right catalyst for the specific change you want.
Exactly. It's about finding those agents, innovations, or factors that will most effectively facilitate the desired transformation.
Next up, alloying. Combining things to make something better, stronger.
Like metals, yeah. Copper and tin make bronze, which is way more useful than either alone. Iron and carbon make steel. Adding other elements changes steel's properties further, more strength, rust resistance, etc.
And the metaphor applies to skills and knowledge.
Totally. Combining different skills in a team or different kinds of knowledge in one person can create something much more powerful than the sum of the parts. Reliability plus work ethic plus learning a potent personal alloy.
The book mentions Tecumseh and Brock during the War of 1812.
Good example. Tecumseh's knowledge of the land and warriors, plus Brock's British military resources. Together, they achieved that surprising victory at Fort Detroit. Complementary strengths, greater effect.
Like a strategic alloy. And Leonardo da Vinci.
The ultimate example of a knowledge alloy. Curiosity, observation, challenging assumptions, learning from everyone. That blend allowed his breakthroughs in art, science, engineering. His mind was the alloy.
So alloying shows how combining the right things in the right way creates something greater. Materials, teams, knowledge.
It's about synergy. Looking for combinations that unlock unexpected potential.
All right, let's dive into biology proper. Evolution Part 1, natural selection and extinction. Adapting or dying out.
The core idea. Variation exists. The environment selects traits that help survival and reproduction, and those traits get passed on.
The fast zebra example. Faster ones escape lions, reproduce, population gets faster over time.
Classic illustration. And extinction happens when species can't adapt to changes environment shifts. Competition gets too tough. It's often gradual, driven by resource competition, climate change, or ecosystem corruption.
Language evolution is used as a parallel, like French borrowing words.
Yeah, languages adapt too. French incorporated words stayed flexible. There were even active efforts now to keep it relevant. Contrast that with Latin, maybe too complex, no central body managing change. It declined as the environment of users changed.
The peppered moths in England during industrialization is another classic.
Perfect example. Soot darkened trees, dark moths survived better. Pollution drops, light moths make a comeback. Direct environmental pressure driving trait frequency.
Shows adaptation can happen relatively quickly. And humans need to adapt too, right? Recognizing when old ways fail. Like French versus German tank strategy before WWII.
Crucial point. Adapting strategies, not just physical traits. The Red Queen effect comes in here too.
Running just to stay in the same place because everyone else is evolving too.
Exactly. Constant adaptation needed just to keep up. We also see vestigial structures, leftovers, like our appendix. And exaptation traits evolved for one thing, getting used for something new, like tech for player pianos coming from pipe organs.
So evolution and natural selection mean constant adaptation is key to environmental pressure, to competition. Don't adapt, you risk decline or extinction.
Whether it's species, businesses, ideas, adaptability is crucial for long-term survival in a changing world.
Building on evolution, let's focus specifically on competition, a huge driving force.
Absolutely fundamental in biology. Organisms compete for limited resources. Food, space, mates, status. Often a zero-sum game, one wins, the other loses.
And it happens within species, right? Intraspecific, like male animals fighting for mates.
Yep. And between species interspecific, like different plants competing for sunlight in a forest.
Can be direct fighting or indirect, like just using up resources faster so others can't get them.
Right. This constant competition shapes biodiversity, drives adaptation, determines who thrives. Resource availability is key to how intense it gets.
So competition isn't just incidental, it's a core biological process shaping life.
Definitely. Helps understand the dynamics, the pressures all living things face.
Okay, broadening out from competition to the whole system, the ecosystem. Interconnected species and their environment. The book stresses connections, right? Everything affects everything else.
Hugely important point. It's a complex web. Changing one small thing can have big, unpredictable ripple effects. That's the danger of intervention biases, jumping in thinking you can fix one thing without considering the knock-on effects.
Keystone species are crucial here, the ones with a disproportionately large impact.
Exactly, like a top predator keeping herbivore numbers in check, or a certain plant providing critical food or habitat. Remove a keystone species and the whole ecosystem can unravel.
The book uses historical analogies too, like silver flowing into China.
Yeah, huge disruption. Changed the economy, power structures, even led to that resilient Chinese community forming in Manila, outside the empire's direct control, and an unexpected system response.
And Bill Walsh building the 49ers, creating a team ecosystem.
Right, focusing on a culture, a standard of performance, valuing every role. But the book warns you can't just copy-paste success. The specific people, the context, the ingredients matter hugely.
Makes sense. Then there's generalists versus specialists.
Generalists thrive anywhere, eat anything, but face lots of competition. Specialists are perfectly adapted to one niche, one food source, very efficient there, but vulnerable if that niche changes.
Coca-Cola is the generalist example, adapting its brand everywhere.
Yeah, appealing broadly, changing its image to fit different markets. And convergence is interesting too, unrelated species evolving similar traits because they face similar pressures, like fins on fish and dolphins. Shows environment shapes evolution in predictable ways sometimes. Humans are kind of convergent masters, adapting to so many niches.
So ecosystems are complex, interconnected. Understand the web, the key players, the strategies, generalist, specialist, to navigate complexity.
Whether it's nature, society, or business, the principles apply broadly.
Let's talk self-preservation next. That basic drive to survive, avoid harm. It motivates so much behavior.
It's fundamental, yeah. Deep biological imperative. But there are exceptions, right? Like worker bees sacrificing themselves for the hive.
Or drone bees dying after mating. The group or the genes take priority over the individual sometimes.
Exactly. And Gioconda Belli's story in Nicaragua adds a human layer.
The revolutionary who risked her safety for her beliefs.
Yeah, suggesting humans can prioritize meaning, purpose, a better future over immediate safety, a kind of deferred self-preservation for ideals or for her daughter's future. We need more than just survival.
Her actions were driven by significance, not just staying alive. Shows we can transcend basic instinct for higher values.
It does. And then there's the underground city of Derinkuyu in Turkey.
An extreme example, hiding thousands underground for safety from constant conflict.
Shows the incredible lengths self-preservation can drive us to. So while survival is primary, humans complicate it. We factor in long-term goals, group needs, meaning, purpose.
Okay, near the end here. Replication, copying information, traits. What's key here?
3 things needed: a code, like DNA or an idea, a copying mechanism, and a place to process the code. Cells, cultures, technologies, they all replicate.
But perfect copies aren't always good. Variation matters.
Crucial point: errors, mutations, they introduce variation. That's the raw material for adaptation, for improvement. Replication without variation leads to stagnation or worse.
Like the Habsburgs' inbreeding, trying to preserve the pure line.
And ended up concentrating harmful genes. Bad outcome. Or rigid military doctrine like Germany pre-WWI versus Napoleon's flexibility. Sticking too closely to the old blueprint without adapting hinders success.
So replication ensures continuity, but you need variation for resilience, adaptation, improvement.
A balance between fidelity and flexibility is key.
Next, cooperation, working together for mutual benefit. The book calls it a secret to success.
A profound one. Think about mitochondria likely started as 2 simple cells cooperating, leading to complex life. Or cows and their gut bacteria mutual benefit.
The symphony orchestra analogy works well too. Trust, coordination, commitment, needed to create something bigger than the individual.
Beautiful illustration. And the Montreal Women's Symphony overcoming barriers through cooperation. Shared beliefs are vital too, like money. It only works because we all agree it works.
Collective belief enables massive cooperation. But there are limits. Dunbar's number.
Yeah, the idea that our brains can only handle so many close, stable relationships, maybe around 150. So cooperation is powerful, drives success, but needs the right conditions: trust, shared benefit, common goals. It underpins civilization.
It's how we achieve big things together.
Definitely. Our ability to cooperate is a defining human trait.
Penultimate concept. Hierarchical organization. Levels of authority. Businesses, governments.
Yeah, they're everywhere. Downsides exist: stifled creativity, stress. But they seem to fit a human tendency to organize. They offer structure, leadership, efficient coordination, especially for complex tasks. Even leaderless groups often develop informal hierarchies,
People rebel against them, like the French Revolution.
but often end up creating new ones, like Napoleon's system. Hierarchies seem hard to escape entirely. Even status symbols, fashion, they signal standing within these structures.
And they emerge in crises, like the Chilean miner.
Right. In extreme situations, clear roles in leadership provide vital organization and comfort. So despite drawbacks, hierarchies meet a need for structure, especially under pressure. Understanding their dynamics, how they help and hinder, is key.
And finally, incentives. Rewards and punishments motivating behavior.
Hugely powerful. Rewards encourage, punishments discourage. We even store incentives, fat reserves, money, social capital, giving us flexibility.
Misaligned incentives can be disastrous, though. Thalidomide.
Horrific example. Financial incentives for the company and doctors, lack of testing, cognitive biases led to tragedy. Or Andrew Wakefield's fraudulent vaccine autism link, driven by financial conflicts. Devastating public health impact.
Shows how badly designed incentives backfire, encouraging short-term thinking, unethical acts, unintended consequences.
Absolutely. Crafting incentives carefully to reward the actual desired behavior, the long-term goals, is critical.
So understanding and aligning incentives is crucial for predicting and shaping behavior, getting desired outcomes.
Know what motivates people, then design systems that channel that motivation effectively and ethically.
Wow, okay. That brings us to the end of a really packed deep dive. We covered a ton today: relativity, reciprocity, thermodynamics, inertia, friction, viscosity, leverage, activation, energy, catalysts, alloying.
Evolution, competition, ecosystems, self-preservation, replication, cooperation, hierarchy, and incentives. All these mental models from physics, chemistry, and biology.
And hopefully this gives everyone listening that toolkit we talked about, a way to see things with more clarity, make better decisions, get those aha moments.
We really hope so. It's about understanding the underlying forces at play.
Definitely. We'd encourage you all to think about how these models apply in your own lives, which ones really struck a chord, maybe dig a bit deeper into those.
And a final thought to leave you with. The universe runs on these basic principles, right? But how they interact creates all this incredible complexity, all these surprises. So how can understanding these fundamental forces help you navigate uncertainty and maybe shape your own path more effectively, more wisely? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.